I'm Alex Perry, host of the Practically Speaking podcast, where I simplify and demystify public speaking and communication so you can say what you need and want to say. I am excited because this is part 2 of my interview with Gary Noesner. Now, if you didn't listen to part 1, I'm going to tell you to go back and listen to that before you listen to this one. Our conversation about listening, about the importance of listening, and how our lack of ability to do this is impacting us in our everyday lives and is impacting the world. It's just such a timely message that Gary shares. It's timeless about the importance of listening. And I want you to hear that first before you dive in to part 2. Part 2 is really Gary and I talking about the Waco series. So Gary is the FBI agent that is portrayed in the Waco series on Netflix. And I had so many questions and so many things that I wanted to know about how the series was done and the accuracy of the series, and Gary answers all of that in this episode. And he also answers some really fun questions because you know me, I'm the minivan mogul. I got some serious questions, and I got to tell you, he set me up for a challenge, and I love a good challenge. He set me up for a challenge by telling me on our pre-call that he doesn't like to know the questions he's going to be asked before he goes into the interview. So I took that challenge and made sure that I had questions that I was for sure Gary has never been asked on a podcast before. And let me tell you, the answers at the end are really, really fun. Think Cheetos, moonshine, and minivans. I can't wait for you to listen to the second part of my 2-part series interview with Gary. So without further ado, here is Gary talking about the series Waco. All right, talk to me about Waco. We talked a little bit about it on our pre-call, but
never heard of it. Never.
Let me tell you, I've got this friend named Gary.
Oh yeah, what happened out there? Interesting.
Talk about the series and some of the questions that you get and how you answer those.
Well, I'm probably sort of the face of internal criticism in the FBI on Waco. And because of that, through the years, it's been, 28 years, 27 years since it happened. I believe that organizations like the FBI, which for most of its history have enjoyed a pretty significantly positive relationship by the American people and thought of as being professional, it's important that we learn from our mistakes and we make corrections. So rather than deny when we make mistakes, we need to live up to it, assess it, learn what we did right, what we did wrong, and incorporate those lessons in our policies and our behaviors moving forward. So I've agreed in the past, there's been a dozen or so documentaries made about Waco, and some of the very early ones before we as agents were allowed to speak were very anti-government, very biased, very inaccurate. But once we were able to, either as retired agents or otherwise, to be able to speak in some of these things, the picture became a little more expansive. And then it sort of shifted to these crazy nut job cult people. What I liked and was attracted to in the Waco TV series was the directors, the Dowdle brothers, director-producers, wanted to make a balanced view. They purchased David Thibodeau's book about being a survivor from inside. They wanted to have a sense of what the people inside felt and what they were looking at when they looked out at the FBI and earlier the ATF. And then, since I had written an extensive chapter in my book about Waco, they wanted my book to kind of reflect how the FBI was viewing the Davidians and what we did. Now, my book, again, talks about some of the very significant internal disagreements we had in the FBI. Everybody thinks the FBI is a monolith and we all think and behave and act the same way. We're like any other organization. There's different opinions and approaches and capabilities. At Waco, because it was a long, expensive, frustrating situation, we got there after 4 ATF agents were dead, 17 wounded, 5 or 6 Davidians had been killed. So it was a pretty grim situation, and probably starting out as badly as one would wish. But the team I led, the negotiation team, which I headed up, I think really understood pretty clearly who we were dealing with and the kind of people they were and what their motivation was. And we began a process of creating a relationship of trust, differentiating ourselves from the initial action by ATF. And we succeeded through the first, half of the 51-day ordeal to get 35 people out, including 21 children. And I remain, fairly proud of that because my team was phenomenal. But at the same time, at $1 million a day and the public saying, what's taking so long? Why is the FBI so weak? Why can't they do this? There was a lot of pressure to resolve it sooner. What's taking so long? You're the FBI, just go in and arrest those people. So the on-scene commander, while he supported the negotiation efforts, also supported the tactical commander's view, which was to tighten the pressure outside, to use demonstrations of force to convince them, to compel them to come out. And I think the biggest flaw we had in the FBI was the on-scene commander and senior managers in the FBI, even back at headquarters, did not appreciate the very inconsistent messages that says, if you're holding, your family and threatening them inside your house, and I come and I'm starting to talk to you, and I said, Alex, I know you got some issues and problems, but let's see if we can work something out. And then the SWAT team goes forward and crushes your brand new car. That's not going to do much for our relationship. I hear what you're saying, Gary. You sound like a nice guy, but so-and-so out there just really ruined my day. And I don't think, as simple as it sounds, I don't think our on-scene commander fully appreciated the inconsistencies in the manner in which those behaviors and actions undercut the negotiation process and damaged the relationship. So, after 26 days or whatever it was that I was there, they decided that they wanted someone that would, running the negotiation team, would be a little more receptive to a stronger external action. So they replaced me and they brought someone else in, and no one else came out for the remainder of the siege, not a single person. The TV show, I think, getting back to that, it's a long way to respond to your question. I think adequately, more than adequately, I think it fairly conveyed the tension and disagreement within the FBI, because that was taken mostly from my book. There is certainly dramatic license there. I mean, for example, they even show my character at Ruby Ridge. I wasn't even at Ruby Ridge. My partner was. I was out of the country. But they needed to get Michael Shannon, who played me, a great actor. They needed to get him in the first episode. So that's what they did. So there's a fair amount of dramatic license. But the drama and the conflict within the FBI was, I think, pretty accurate. Where I had some issues with the TV program, and I was a consultant for the show and was on set for some of it, was the overly sympathetic portrayal of David Koresh, as we talked about. I think what they were trying to do was show him to be a charismatic guy who had the ability to attract followers. Mm-hmm. And Taylor Kitsch, who played him, the star from Friday Night Lights, is such a nice guy. He really is. He's just a wonderful person. And that comes through in his characterization. He should have got an Emmy Award for his portrayal of Koresh, in my opinion. But he's a brilliant actor, and he did a wonderful job. But it came across as too sympathetic. Now, and I don't think they adequately showed the dark, sinister, manipulative, narcissistic side of Koresh. That's my big beef. In addition, the beginning of the show makes one think that the ATF started the firefight during the initial raid. I don't know what the truth is on that. I do know one of the TV cameramen who was there testified that the Davidians fired first. But I'm not convinced either way. I just don't know. I tend to think it got sparked somehow. Two armed groups of people come up against each other. It's like these riots. You put the rioters and the police together in the street, the recipe's pretty much going to make you a problem there. So that was the other issue, was who started the fire at the end. And that, even though I wasn't there, I was long gone at that point in time. And I argued with the directors about this quite a bit, and I got them, believe it or not, to modify what was originally shown as a much more clear depiction of the FBI starting the fire. The arson investigation, the Danforth Commission, makes it pretty clear that the fires were started by the Branch Davidians inside. There's people that don't want to believe that, and that's fine. But the evidence is quite conclusive. Graham Craddock, one of the surviving Davidians, there was 9 that survived the final day of the fire, including David Thibodeau, who was also a consultant on the TV show and whose book they used for that inside look. But Graham Craddock testified the following day that one of the fellow Davidians started the fire. We had microphones inside saying, we hear them saying, start the fires. There was outside observer that saw one of them lighting a fire. And the actual arson investigators were able to determine the fire started in at least 3 locations simultaneously. So I was a little put off that the show depicted that sort of being done by the FBI. The FBI clearly put in tear gas, and they clearly started the fire as a reaction to that. But that's different from saying the FBI started the fire.
Right, different than pouring accelerant and lighting.
I just don't think that's fair. As much as I disagreed with, and I did, the on-scene commander and the tactical commander, I know them both, and neither one of them wanted to see anybody hurt. Everybody wanted to see everybody come out alive. There's no question of that. But we live in an age of some very strong anti-government sentiment. And it just does not, what I just said doesn't fit the narrative of some of these people. So they're going to believe big old bad government decided to go kill those people, and nothing you say to them is going to dissuade them from that notion, and that's the way it is.
Do you ever talk to Dick Rogers, or it's James Jamar? Is that right?
Yeah, no, we haven't spoken since we all testified before Congress, sometime after the event, and we got along. And Dick Rogers and I worked side by side down at the FBI Academy. I would see him occasionally there in the gym or whatever. And we always knew we had some strong disagreements on this, but we didn't have any outright conflict. But, I respect both guys. Both were sort of encouraged to move on with their careers and retire after Waco, whereas I ended up getting a promotion based on the fact that the FBI while it defended itself internally, it realized that Waco had really been a departure from what we knew how to do. It's not like we didn't know how to manage it. We departed from our playbook, our normal orthodoxy. And that's the part for me that made it so egregious, is that we did know better. I don't know. It's almost like, don't throw that egg on the floor because it'll break. And we said, let's try throwing the egg on the floor.
Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if that works.
We kind of know what's going to happen there, so let's not do that. And so that was disappointing. But afterwards, the FBI embarked on a very major program to reorganize our crisis management efforts. And I ended up being part of a team that trained every single FBI leader on how this is supposed to work, reminding them of the lessons we had learned, through the years on how to do this. So, the FBI hasn't had many crises since those days. 3 years later, we had a big one in Montana with the Freeman, as you read my book, in 96, and that was 85 days instead of the 51 at Waco. And this time we followed the negotiation playbook, and everybody came out alive, no shots fired. It was perfect. It was a perfect validation of what we should have done at Waco. And the problem was, because nobody died, no fire, nobody knows about it.
Well, people still point to Waco as being the longest siege, and that's not correct.
Not even close.
That's not even close. That's,
yeah. Well, I was also in Peru for the Japanese ambassador's takeover, and that was 120 days. So, but the Montana siege. And I was so mad at FBI headquarters afterwards, because 60 Minutes came. They had a reporter out there in Montana the day we resolved it. Everybody came out peacefully. And this reporter says, I want to do a piece for 60 Minutes about how the FBI did this one so well. I get on the phone, I call the head press guy at the FBI headquarters, and they said, nah, we're not interested. And I wanted to scream. I said, here we are trying to show the public that, this differentiates us from what happened to Waco. And we missed the opportunity. But
so that's just how it works now. Back to what you said about what the things that you see in the news and in the media. So much of it is negative. So much of it doesn't capture the good that's going on.
Yeah. And, people in my former life typically are conservative people, and they tend to cast blame on the media. Oh, the media is doing all this. The media reflects who we are, and what we want to see and what we want to hear. And I've, in my life, known an awful lot of reporters, and most of them are just good, decent, honest people. Do they get things wrong? Absolutely. But, I really fear making them out to be an enemy, because I think our democracy, and I'm a big student of history and our government, is very dependent on a free and independent press. And it's okay if they get some things wrong. That's why a knowledgeable person, I spoke to a class of students the other day, and I said, get sources of information, get your information from a wide variety of sources. Don't just watch one channel or read one podcast, or if there's a topic that interests you and you want to know about it, you have the tools in this age and time to really ferret out a diverse range of opinions. Well, do your homework. If you're going to formulate an opinion, do so based on some effort and some fact finding. Don't just do what embrace the description that some news media guy gives you.
I like what you said, though, because you say this over and over again. You say it in the book in different ways. I've heard you, and I really respect you for it, is that there is no perfect, that we all, whether it's the media, whether it's the FBI, whether it's me, whether it's the whoever you're listening to, that every person is not perfect, that we all make mistakes, we're fallible, and it's how you recover from that, the intent.
I know. I've evolved in my life. I think most of us have. There's a book I was interviewed, came out a few years ago, called Nonsense, The Power of Not Knowing. And I love this book. And they profile a bunch of people's successful life. And I was fortunate they profiled me. And the theme of the book is, the commonality is successful people are comfortable in gray, going to the point you just talked about.
Yeah.
We don't have to have absolute answers. There are some things in life that are so complex and nuanced that it's okay to say, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm conflicted. I'm not sure. Here's some things that I know, and here's some things I know on the other side, but I'm not sure about this, and it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to come away with an absolute, definitive, clear answer, and we were talking about Waco. It's a great example. It's a complex issue.
Right.
Who was at fault? David Koresh could have come out every day leading his people. Does that mean the FBI was perfect? No. It's not black and white. The FBI made a lot of mistakes. It contributed to the outcome. And that's about as far as you can go with it. If you want to make one side the good guys and the other side the bad guys, whichever side that's on, I think you're just being naive. It's not that simple. So we all have to be comfortable with that. And we're human beings, we make mistakes. There are ambiguities. That's the way it is.
Living in the gray, learning how to listen. You've been really gracious with your time with me.
It's always a pleasure. We've had some great chats, and
I have a if you have a minute, I have a couple other things, because you set me up. You set me up for a challenge.
All right, I got time. Let's go.
Before we wrap all this up, and you have been gracious, and there's so much to be learned from your book, from your talks. I listened to you on Terry Gross, the NPR episode.
That was a good interview.
It's a great interview. And so every time I listen, I learned something. So thank you for that. So a couple of things. First, on a more serious note, I always ask people, because my passion is behind helping other people speak, helping other people share their thoughts. And so I always say, what would you say today if you knew that tomorrow you would never speak again?
You mean being a speaker again, or speak as a human?
Period. So my background, speech language pathologist, every day walking in and meeting people who were talking one day and then not talking the next. So if you knew, it was limited, what would you say?
I'm so focused on communication skills. It would be a debilitating thing for me, no doubt, but I think you'd have to really find things about yourself that you didn't know, creative ways to convey your feelings and your thoughts without being able to draw upon the tool of your verbal words. Verbal words, that's superfluous. But
if you knew your words were limited, if tomorrow, what would you say today? And who would you say it to?
Well, I think most of us, if we're decent people, we'd want to say something special to our family. You and our grandkids, I'd probably record a message and say, you may not hear Grandpa's voice again, but know that I love you and I will always love you and support you, and you meant so much to my life. The kind of things you hope you would say if you have an opportunity to say it to people that are important to you. But I've been someone that's been blessed with. I have a wonderful family. I've had such great supportive friends in my life. I've had more than my share of luck for sure. And there's people that are important to you that you sort of take for granted from. There's an old friend of mine, a psychologist, a Canadian psychologist that, I haven't talked to for years. And I thought about him yesterday. I tried to call him and I didn't connect with him, but I'm going to try again because at a certain period of time, somebody was very important in my life, and in fact is somebody I turned to for personal help with the aftermath of Waco, and you realize that we all have busy lives. We can only concentrate on so many things at once that sometimes there are people that are important to us that we sort of have neglected a little bit. And that really hurts us more than anybody else because you've lost out on the opportunity to have that special input from them. So I'm not sure if that's a good answer for your question.
I think that's a great answer. And I'm going to want to follow up. Do you hear back from your psychologist friend?
I haven't yet. I just called. This was just literally yesterday. I tried to call.
Wow. So
that's one thing something about my mind works. I used to keep a lot of notes and sometimes I do, but I'll come back to something and I maybe, when he didn't answer his phone and it didn't go to voicemail, so I couldn't leave him a message. So I made a mental note. I'll get back with him, and it might take me a day or two or a week, but I will, and and I'll try again, and we'll connect. And during the COVID sheltering in place, the social distancing, my wife actually said, "I'm going to try to call an old friend every day and reconnect." And I said, what a great idea. So I've tried to mimic that a little bit, and I haven't done it every day, but I reached out to a couple old college buddies recently that I hadn't heard from for a long time. And, it just kind of, it feels really good to reconnect a little bit, and yeah. I wish I had time for more of that. I really do. Because sometimes you don't realize also the impact you've had on other people's lives. Occasionally I'll hear from a police officer said, you may not remember me, but I just saw the Waco show, but I was in your class back in 1980, so-and-so.
Right.
And you're lucky if you remember who the person was, but you say, you didn't really appreciate that something you said or some experience you had with this person was very memorable to them and meaningful. And that makes you feel good that it had that impact. But it goes back to that mentoring thing I was talking to you about before, But yeah, so I don't know. I think if somebody shut off my voice, I don't know what I'd do. It'd be tough. I'd have to learn American Sign Language, I guess.
I have a feeling that somehow or another, a therapist like me would come along and help find a way to get you out of whatever, or give you a different method, writing, gesturing. There's all sorts of things. Okay, so when we first talked, you talked to me about how you like to go into these interview scenarios without knowing what questions you're going to be asked because you want to have to think on your feet. So I was thinking about listening to your interviews. I'm like, what questions has Gary never been asked before in an interview? So me being the minivan mogul, I thought, all right, this is my shot. This is my chance to ask him. I'm for sure no one has ever asked you these questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You ready? All right. Have you ever driven a minivan?
Oh yeah, we used to own one.
Okay, what was the, have you owned a minivan? Like, what did you own? What year was it? Tell me about your van.
Oh, it was a Ford Windstar minivan. I'm not sure if I can tell you the years, but when my, kids were fairly young, it was the family car, and and
did you drive it or did Carol drive it? Who drove it?
well, day in, day out, she would drive it. But, if we were on a trip or a weekend or whatever, we'd sort of do the traditional thing where the man says, I've got to drive, but yeah, we both did. But yeah, it didn't necessarily have the negative stigma that it turned into,
I'm bringing him back, Gary.
Huh?
Bringing him back.
Oh, I think it's a great thing. My daughter, actually, the last time I drove a minivan, one of my daughters has one, and she was down here with her kids, and I had to go to the store to get something, and her car was blocking mine, so I took hers. So that was my last minivan experience. But
Yay! So you're a pro minivan person.
I'm certainly not negative. I don't think I'll be buying one anytime soon. I like my pickup truck, but yeah, I mean, it's a great concept. I remember when Lee Iacocca, that made that man, when he came out with the caravan car concept, that Chrysler was just about to go under, and it was a brilliant move,
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're on a road trip together. We're in a minivan. What's on the playlist?
Oh.
What are we listening to?
Well, it's kind of funny. I'm sort of a NPR junkie. I really like.
This does not surprise me. I've
turned it. I don't listen to music as much as I used to. My wife is big on podcasts, and which you'll be glad to hear. And I've started to particularly serialized podcasts. So if you're taking like we go to Florida every winter for a period of time to the Keys, and that's usually the only time we're in the car together for a long drive, and we'll listen to some podcast or book. The books tend to be tough because it takes too long to get through one, and you find that you stop listening to it halfway through or whatever. But if you can get a podcast that's got like 6 episodes, I found one the last trip we listened to the Rachel Maddow one called The Bagman.
The Bagman. I don't know this.
It's about Spiro Agnew when he was the vice president. He was terribly corrupt guy, corrupt governor of Maryland before he became Nixon's vice president. And the FBI had got him on serious charges, and they were going to go after him, and they were concerned. They had to rush the conviction of, the charging of him, because they knew Nixon was going to be impeached. So they said, if he gets impeached, then this more corrupt guy becomes president. So they had to accelerate it. And they ended up with Agnew making a plea. He served almost no time whatsoever. And everybody said, what a sweetheart deal. But people at the time didn't realize they were in such urgency to get rid of him before Nixon. And Gerald Ford ended up getting that nod. So, but I was around then. I remember pieces of it, but it's part of the story that I hadn't fully understood. She does a great job of laying it out. So yeah, podcasts I like to learn.
Not surprised.
I like to learn.
Do you watch Netflix?
Yeah, we watch.
What's the last thing you binged on?
Oh gosh, what was it? I was watching. We were running out of good things to watch. What was it that we watched? I just watched Hollywood, which is a weird one.
Oh, I saw that. Is it worth it?
We liked it. What else? I watched The Last Kingdom. I like that historical fiction kind of stuff. Bernard Cornwell's a great author. I watched Designated Survivor. It's been out for a while.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
What I find so intriguing about the premise, I've gotten a little tired of it, but it's about this low-level cabinet guy that the whole president and the cabinet and all of Congress is killed in a bombing of the Capitol during the State of the Union or whatever. So this low-level cabinet guy becomes the president because he's not there. He's the designated survivor. And he just turns out to be such a great person, such a compassionate, caring politician that wants to do the right thing. it goes without saying that's a bit of a contrast to what we may be seeing in real life. So it just had a certain appeal to me. But like a lot of these shows, it gets a little repetitive after a while. I think the writers have a hard time. We've been a couple of years now, but I love The Americans when it was on about the spies, the Russian spies. Just a great show. So there's a lot of things out there, that I watch less in the summer because, it stays lighter and we're outside more. And,
out doing all the things. All the things. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me and letting me listen to your stories and learn from you. And now my listeners, including my mom, because I warned you in advance. I was like, I have like 4 listeners and one of them is my mom. And so
what's your mom's first name?
Sharon.
What?
Sharon.
Sharon or Karen?
Sharon. S-H Sharon.
Hello, Sharon. You got a great daughter. No, I wish you luck on your book, and it's an exciting development for you, and hopefully it'll allow people the pleasure of hearing what you have to say and your take on things. And when do I get my copy, by the way?
Well, as soon as I get them, I mean, somebody's busy. Like we talked at the beginning about your books getting published, all 1,200 in a week. Or you're taking over my publishing printing houses.
I saw your little video on opening the package that your book came in, and I remember when mine first came out. It's a very similar thing. It's quite amazing to see your name on a book, and it's a great achievement. It takes a lot of work. I don't know that the public appreciates how much work it takes to put a book together, and the editing and the process you go through. So, but I'm sure it'll be great. I look forward to reading it.
Well, I will send you a copy. Promise. I mean, we'll have to get together at some point. I need a signed copy of my book, and whenever you're in Indianapolis or I end up in the hills of Virginia.
Yeah. Bring your moonshine. Yeah.
Does moonshine go with Cheetos? Cheetos are my snack. Does moonshine go with Cheetos?
You don't have to bring moonshine. We have plenty of it here.
I'm scared of moonshine. I'm scared.
I live in Franklin County, Virginia, which it used to be the moonshine capital of the country back in the 20s. So
are you supposed to buy? You're an FBI guy. Are you supposed to buy moonshine? I mean,
who said I bought moonshine? I just said we're the moonshine capital. You're not going to get me on tape admitting
so much.
All right. Well, stay in touch. Okay. Thank you, Gary. My pleasure. All right. I'll catch you later. Okay. Bye.
Was that an incredible episode? Oh my goodness. I cannot say thank you to Gary enough for his graciousness with his time, with his energy, the thoughtful way that he responds to questions. I believe Gary carries a timeless message that's important for all of us around the importance of listening and of not knowing all the answers, because we don't. If we take a good look at ourselves, if we take an honest look at ourselves, we don't have all the answers. And so curiosity, the ability to listen, those are the communication skills that are really going to carry us through life, that are going to help us solve problems, that are going to help us relieve conflicts, and are the skills that if we want to be exceptional communicators, they're the kinds of skills that we must learn. So I'm grateful for Gary sharing that with us. I'm grateful for him telling us all about the series Waco and for sharing funny anecdotes about minivans and moonshine. I don't know how you felt at the end of this, but I got to the end and I thought, there's not enough. This is too short. So hopefully there will be a way to have Gary back on the show and to ask him more questions. You can find loads and loads and loads of things, of talks and interviews that Gary has done. Go to GaryNoesner.com. I'm going to leave that in the show notes for you. You can find his interview with Terry Gross on NPR. I highly recommend that you listen to that episode. And I know you will enjoy listening to Gary over and over again like I have. It was just incredible. So thank you, Gary. And now I am signing off. I will be back with another episode of Practically Speaking, helping you demystify and simplify public speaking. If you enjoyed this episode, will you do me a favor and please share this, hit subscribe. I want these messages to go out into the world. So if you found value in this, hit subscribe, hit share, write a review. I would be so grateful. I am Alex Perry, host of the Practically Speaking podcast. You can find me on social media at PSWithAlex. I'm on all the social media outlets, save Twitter because Twitter scares me. Thank you so much again for listening, and I will see you next time.